Welcome to The Screen Queen, the show where I'll be talking about your favorite show or your favorite movie. You'll just have to find out what you're about to know. This is your Screen Queen, your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there and welcome to the show. This is your subscription to fiction. Welcome to The Screen Queen. I am the host, Samantha Parrish, and thank you so much for pressing play and coming to see the show. I appreciate you. When people think of The Bodyguard, they think, oh, well that's where the song I Will Always Love You comes from. That is correct, but this is a film that's more than just the hit song that spawned from the movie. The Bodyguard has a very interesting history that tends to get overlooked because people make fun of this movie. Many people loved the movie, or they hated that they loved the movie. Or there were some people that just weren't quite ready for The Bodyguard quite yet. There were people that were divided about Whitney Houston's performance. They felt that Kevin Costner was a little bit too cheesy, but really looking at the film, I can honestly say that the critiques don't match the film. And I'm not just saying this as a person who loves this film. Once you know what I know, it completely changes the way that you look at The Bodyguard. Just to give you a couple of snippets of what you are going to be listening to for this episode, there's going to be many musical references, production notes, and you'd be surprised how much Kevin Costner helped out with this film. There's going to be a whole entire section on him. So if any of that is appealing to you, by all means, continue listening. The Bodyguard came out in 1992, but it was actually written back in the 1970s. Lawrence Kasdan, who is a name that you might not be familiar with, but you'll be familiar with what he wrote. This was the man that wrote The Bodyguard, he wrote Wyatt Earp, he wrote... God, what else did he write? He wrote a whole bunch. He wrote for Star Wars. He did a lot of credits. This man has had like a 40-50 year writing span. But when he wrote The Bodyguard back in the 1970s, no one was really interested because of the way he sold the concept. He wanted this to be an interracial relationship between a white bodyguard and a black singer, and he wanted Steve McQueen and Diana Ross to star. And a lot of production people were like, I don't know, it's a little too soon, we're not there yet, we're not comfortable with that yet, which, awful, considering I would have wanted to see that movie. I would have wanted to see Steve McQueen and Diana Ross. That would have been a power couple. But I will admit, I think that Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston do hold up to the same stature of power as Diana Ross and Steve McQueen. Lawrence Kasdan admitted in the making of The Bodyguard that it took 19 years for the film to get greenlit. This film would not be possible if it was not for Kevin Costner going with Lawrence Kasdan to the studio, pitching the film, and also making the promise that he's going to be a co-producer to help out with anything that's involved with The Bodyguard. Kevin's true to his word. There's a lot more about him that you'll find out in this film that he did. He really is the unspoken hero of the film, despite the fact that he plays a hero. He did a lot of training with bodyguards. He was interested in the idea of bringing a whole new limelight to bodyguards. To this day, Kevin Costner is still approached by many bodyguards that shake his hand and just say, thank you for representing us in a better limelight. They didn't get a good limelight, and it's sad considering many bodyguards in film or in real life were kind of written off as like pushover busybodies. It's like, well, there's a context clue in the word bodyguard that's called guard. That's what their job is. And they have to make sure that this person is protected from people that you wouldn't think are a threat. It means they're doing their job right. And my God, Kevin Costner did portray the idea, the posture, the dialect, and the training of a bodyguard to perfection. There is so much that Kevin Costner did for this movie that I need to go ahead and get it out of the way. Kevin Costner went out of his way to make sure that this was a perfect film, but a really great acting experience for Whitney Houston. So this isn't really common knowledge, but Whitney Houston was trying to get into acting, and she didn't really get the best of luck in the many ventures she went to. She actually auditioned for Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show, and, well, obviously she didn't get it, unfortunately. But, so when The Bodyguard came up, that's like a perfect role for her. In fact, her chemistry with Kevin Costner was so great that it elevates the film so much more with what happened off set. One day on set, Whitney Houston was off her game. She didn't feel good, and Kevin Costner approached her and asked her what's wrong. And she said, "I don't feel good. I don't like this movie makeup. It makes me feel very uncomfortable." And he said, "All right, come with me." And he took her to the makeup trailer, and he instructed the makeup artist to take off the makeup and put on her music video makeup. He wanted her to be in her element. If the music video makeup is what makes her feel comfortable, will get her in her mojo, and get her in the game, that's the way it's got to be. He made a really good executive decision on the set. You know, there are most actors that can be absolute divas, but this was like a good diva moment. Honestly, I understand why Whitney Houston said that she wasn't comfortable in the movie makeup. And I say that from experience. Back when I did stand-up comedy, one time I did a performance where I wore jeans and a t-shirt, then my usual ensemble of a dress and a vest. I was completely off of my game. I wasn't me. So when I went back the next time, I wore an outfit that was comfortable for me, and my performance was so much better than it was the last time. It's those little touches that elevate you to the best of your ability, and Kevin Costner saw that in Whitney Houston. There's many things that he did to make her performance better. He even told her one time that if she gave him music lessons, and he gave her acting lessons, and that's how she got to be a better actress, is because of him. But there's also something that Kevin Costner did that not many people know about. He's the reason why I Will Always Love You is a cappella. When they were making the production of the song, they had to have some song that will blow it out of the park. And with the tie-in joke about the scene where Rachel Marin is talking about how sad the song I Will Always Love You is, what better way to come full circle and have her do a cover of that song? When they were creating the song, they had a lot more music to it in the beginning. And Kevin Costner suggested, just as a possibility, to see what it would sound like as a cappella. And many of the people in the music department were a little... They weren't on board with it. They were like, "Kevin, booby, you're an actor. What do you know about music?" And he's like, "Just hear me out." And so they're like, "All right, fine, why not? We'll try it out." And then they asked Whitney to do the beginning in a cappella, and their jaws dropped. And I like to imagine Kevin Costner like, "You were saying I don't know anything about music? Okay. So when you hear that song, on the radio, in the store, anywhere, know that Kevin Costner is the reason why that song is the way it is." Looking at the whole production of The Bodyguard, this film really is 99% carried by Kevin Costner. And I really have to emphasize this because everywhere you go for information about The Bodyguard, you're going to find out how he contributed in one way or another. Like I mentioned with him learning how to be an accurate bodyguard and helping out with the song to make I Will Always Love You in a different, more memorable version that will be for the film, but to also elevate Whitney's talents to another level. And on top of that, there's another thing that he did that's very minuscule, but it has such a macro effect once you know it. Earlier I mentioned in the film about how Steve McQueen was supposed to be the role of Frank Farmer. He had his hair cut just like Steve McQueen, just to honor the actor that was once the chosen actor for the film. There's one more thing I'm going to share about Kevin Costner before I move on to the other points about The Bodyguard. At Whitney Houston's funeral, there was a story that Kevin Costner shared that I never would have thought about this. I don't think anyone would ever thought about this with how Whitney Houston was a lot more self-conscious about her ability as a musician. There's a lot of humanity that no one really knew about because she looks so perfect. And I think we get that misconception with a lot of certain celebrities is because of the fact that they're so accomplishing, not remembering that they're like us and they're human too, and they have needs and doubts and worries. So when she did the song I Will Always Love You, she was worried about her ability to perform the song, and Kevin Costner said at the funeral that he told her, "Whitney, you did that without the damn band. You did good." Even though Kevin Costner has a very defined career, he's not really known for The Bodyguard, and strangely as I think about it, I think he probably prefers not to talk about the film. It's a humble thing. Otherwise, we would have read or seen articles about how he saved the song for I Will Always Love You, or what he did for the film. There were people that talked about him and the actions that he did than him having to say what he did for that film. So I gotta switch gears here and talk about the other amazing star of the movie, which is the dearly missed Whitney Houston. In the 1980s, no one could go anywhere without hearing a Whitney Houston song or talking about Whitney Houston. Even though I was not alive back then in the 1980s, my mother could definitely attest to the popularity of Whitney Houston. My mother would tell me stories about how Whitney would give these amazing performances, especially the one at the 1991 Super Bowl. It was a no-brainer. This woman had to be an actress. And what better than a character like Rachel Marin, who is a singer turned actress that is getting an Oscar. I mentioned how Whitney worked her ass off for this role, and Kevin really was like her hype man to get her through this film. However, people were not as hype as Kevin was, and it's strange considering how popular she is in the 80s and 90s, and yet when the movie came up, people were like, she was good. There's like this stigma that singers can't really be good actors because it's a different forte of creativity. There are some people that are natural actors, there are some people that have to really work hard at being an actor, and there are some people that work really hard at being an actor, but it's just not sticking. Whitney Houston really did give a great performance, and this was her first movie of her getting in the game. If you look at the awards for the film, a lot of them are Razzie nominations, and they're pointed towards Kevin Costner or Whitney Houston. The Bodyguard really did get a very bad start. I don't think it was even given a start in the first place. Whitney gave it her all in this film. If you really look at this for the fact that it's a woman working her ass off, and Whitney Houston suffered during this film. She was already having a rough time acclimating to a film and wanting to give her best. She suffered a tragedy during this film. She suffered a miscarriage. She was so excited about getting pregnant and getting to do a film, and then I don't know how it happened. It could have been the stress of the movie or stress in real life, but she lost her first child. And she had to take time off of the film to go to the hospital and have the procedure done, and then the coping process afterwards. I've had friends that have miscarried. That shit does not take time to get over like that. She probably had a few weeks. That shit takes months to get over. Not even months, probably years, probably forever, really. Think about that when you're watching The Bodyguard. This is a woman that went through something hellish, and she kept going because she wanted to give it her all. But that actually brings up a very interesting point that not many know about, which is the poster of the film, which is the next point I'm going to talk about. The poster is iconic. It's actually been parodied by multiple people, and recently the film The Hitman's Bodyguard did their own spin on the iconic poster. Except here's the thing. That's not Whitney Houston. I know you're thinking like, well, Sammy, what are you talking about? Of course it's Whitney Houston. I mentioned the miscarriage, and she had to go to the hospital, and they had to start the production for getting the movie poster out to have in advance for when the film is going to be showcased. And time was running out, so they hired Whitney Houston's body double to be in the poster. Kevin Costner himself actually suggested that they have the girl turn her head into Kevin's body so that way it gives more of the element of intimacy and the thrilling factor of what's happening to the singer, what's going on, what are they running from, why is he carrying her out of there. I told you, man, Kevin did a lot for this film, and knowing that he gave the element to really make it powerful, and the fact that they didn't have to take Whitney Houston out of the hospital, that's some genius work right there. I talked about what Kevin can do. I talked about how Whitney won. I talked about the interesting production behind the poster. Now it's time to talk about the main part of this movie that puts everything together, which is the music. To this day, as I'm speaking into this microphone, The Bodyguard still holds the record for the most CD sales. Think about that. A movie in 1992 has never been able to beat any other movies that have a musical incorporation to its plot and can't outdo The Bodyguard. A movie that gets so much flack, that has 6.2 on IMDb, still holds the record. That's a very impressive credit. But there's also a musical note that I have to talk about, and that's actually one of the other characters. This isn't really something that's known unless you really do your homework into this film, and promise me, when you do your homework into this movie, it's worth it to what you'll find out. There is a character named Cy Spector. Gary Kemp, who plays Cy Spector, is a musician himself. He is a part of the band called Spandau Ballet. Now, that name might be familiar to you, but I will go ahead and play something for you that's going to jog your memory. Has your memory been jogged? Because that blew my mind when I found out that the person I've been listening to in the stores was in a movie that I've been watching for almost, 12 years of my life. That's such a nice little niche to have another musician in the movie playing someone who's a part of the marketing for music. And the way that Cy Spector's character, he's a likable scuzzbucket for how he does things for his own ambitions, what can benefit him, which is a lot of people in that industry. He's a very accurate character. A long time ago, when I was writing an article for Vocal.media about The Bodyguard, I had remembered watching The Bodyguard on AMC, and there was the discussion about doing a remake for The Bodyguard with Channing Tatum as the role of Frank Farmer, and it was still kind of up in the air who was going to be playing Rachel Marin. There was talk about Beyonce, Rihanna, which are both great picks. I mean, if I had to be in that production, those would definitely be top tier on my casting list. But turns out The Bodyguard has already been remade. There's already been 3 remakes. There's the one that's in the process that I just told you about, And there's one called Gary the Bodyguard. It's a 12-minute cartoon with the same premise as the first one, but the plot is about a man named Gary that has to stay close to a tentacle hentai demon that is a pornographic star. That's I don't know how to feel about that, to be honest. For those out there that don't know what hentai is, that is Japanese animated pornography. It's bizarre, but it's, unique. That's all I can say about it. The second remake, I don't know how I feel about this because I've seen it. The second is a 6-episode TV series on Netflix just called Bodyguard. And it's about a man named David Budd, who is a former military officer working in the Special Protection Branch of the Metropolitan Police to protect Home Secretary Julie Montague. Well, I mean, they got 60% of the original plot down with a man that was in the military and he's working to protect someone and doesn't really see eye to eye with her, so it does make sense, but that's a stretch to have to say that's a remake of the original premise of a man protecting a singer. I mean, if it was going to be a remake, then it would have the character as a singer, not a secretary. It was kind of strange, but, I mean, if they say that it's a remake of The Bodyguard, I mean, I'll take their word for it. But it's still unclear what the remake is going to be like for The Bodyguard. I have not heard or seen anything else about the remake since I saw the mention about it on Story Notes on AMC. Personally, I can see Channing Tatum as the Kevin Costner character of Frank Farmer. I don't know who else could be in the film. I don't know who could fill the shoes of the other people. The hard part is that everyone is so unique and charismatic. No one else can recreate those moments of chemistry. It's such a unique chemistry to see Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston work together in this film. Unfortunately, chemistry cannot be remade. The director, Mick Jackson, had revealed something that happened in the last scene of the movie with Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston. And what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change the way that you see this final scene of The Bodyguard. And what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change the way that you look at this powerful scene. In a good way, though. So if you have not seen The Bodyguard, I'm going to go ahead and put a timestamp in where you can resume the episode, and so you won't be spoiled of this moment. And then you can come back and listen to it when you have watched The Bodyguard. That while Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston were kissing in this beautiful intimate moment between Frank Farmer and Rachel Marin, the 360 shot that's going around them was filmed by a cameraman that lost control of the camera and spent the entirety of that scene chasing the camera. It never fails to make me smile, knowing that there is a mechanical mishap going on around this very beautiful scene. I joke to myself saying that there's someone on set going, "Jimmy, get the camera, come on! Kevin, Whitney, keep kissing! Jimmy!" But after knowing that, it definitely changed the way I saw that final scene, that there was a bit of a production mishap that was happening. Oh, goodness. There's so many great stories about this film. There are many more stories out there that probably is more than the knowledge that I have been talking about for this episode. As much as the stories make me very happy, and I love being able to talk about the stories of The Bodyguard, there's also something that makes me sad about The Bodyguard, is that Whitney Houston never got to really see how much this film has grown into a more prominent status than it was back in 1992. Back then, she got a lot of flack, and I mentioned that earlier in the episode. But knowing that it's been parodied, people still talk about it, there are remakes, and then a current actual remake of the plot's premise in production, It would have been amazing to see her reaction to the way the Bodyguard has aged. It would have been amazing to see if she had a part to play in the remake. It would have been amazing just to still have Whitney Houston around, to be honest. We lost a great one, and strangely, rewatching The Bodyguard, it makes me appreciate Whitney Houston more than I did when I was younger. I had known that she was a singer that had an amazing voice, but she doesn't get that much credit as an actress. This role was really suited for her, right down to the core of her character, Rachel Marin, being a singer and actress. So in a way, she got to play herself, but she never took it as playing herself. She took this to an art form. She wanted to give a great job. Between her and Kevin Costner being absolute powerhouses in being professionals to the art of acting and the art of music too, it came together perfectly. Every part of this movie is perfect. There are moments that will live on in time, and we will always love it. So that ends the episode of The Bodyguard. This was a wonderful episode to talk about. I really enjoyed being able to share all this information, and I really hope the listeners out there enjoyed it as much as I love talking about it. Now, we have come to the time to select the next episode on The Screen Queen. So if you're new here, I have a system. I put a whole bunch of random ideas for topics in a bowl, and I figure out what the next episode is going to be just by random selection. Okay, I got one. Okay, let's see what it is. Oh goodness, I fold these too well. Ow, ow, I'm stabbing myself with my fingernails. Oh my god. Oh, interesting. This'll be a good episode. The next episode on The Screen Queen is going to be The Night of the Hunter. That's a first. We haven't had a 1950s film that wasn't an animated film on this show. That will be interesting. Alrighty. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and thank you so much for the support. I appreciate those out there that take the time to listen to this show. This has been the second greatest joy in my life as a creator. And I love that I have this platform to talk about movies. It helps me out so much as a creator. It helps me so much as an author. It helps me on so many levels. So I just want to say thank you. So with that said, you all have a fantastic day. Stay amazing. Stay awesome. This is your Screen Queen signing off. Bye-bye.